Welcome back to this discussion on HIV and the youth. And we've learned that the youth contribute 51% of the new adult infections in Kenya. That means that 97 young people get infected every day annually in Kenya. And joining us also in this discussion is Dr. Johnston Kuya, who's the National Coordinator of the Sexual Reproductive Health Rights Alliance in Kenya. And I'll start with you, Dr. Kuya. We've been discussing issues about youth-friendly services and why the youth are contributing to such alarming numbers. Actually, half the new infections in the country. From your experience, having worked or heading the consortium of the 17 NGOs, why are these numbers not going down, they're going up?
I think indeed this is very alarming. And as my colleagues have said, I think the major challenge with the youth is lack of correct and comprehensive sexual reproductive health information. Because if young people are able to be informed, make good choices concerning their sexuality and their lifestyle. So I think this is one of the main challenges that are affecting youth that are contributing to the new cases of infection. So as a country, as stakeholders, we've not been able to address this issue of information, because at the end of the day, and I like what my colleague says, it is empowering, because if young people are not empowered, again, they'll be able to face this challenge of the infection.
Okay. And it's interesting that you've talked about youth empowerment. During the World AIDS Day celebration, we also talked to, or rather, I also had a discussion with Dr. Keegan Bartilon, who's the head of NASCOP, and he had this to say about youth empowerment. Let's take a listen to that.
With that said, youth program will not just focus on HIV. If you focus on HIV, it's like you're targeting them for HIV. So you must have youth programs that empower them in all ways, what we call youth empowerment. One is keeping them in school. We know that one program that when they talk about HIV, you must talk about keeping them in school. You must talk about youth empowerment and employment opportunities and career development in the same platform. Then you can discuss about expanding more towards their reproductive health, their strength in reproductive health. And finally, of course, you want to talk about issues now we are going towards nutrition, diet, a combination of everything that the youth actually require. So not just focusing on just telling them about HIV, that won't help. And let them plan their own programs and see what they need to do with their program. Because intergeneration things means that most of the youth are not empowered. You need to have them empowered so they can control their life. They have their own plan of themselves, what they want to do.
We've heard him talking about the youth empowerment and them having their own designing their own program so that they participate on it. I'll just start from you, Njoroge. What do you have to say? What's your comment about what Dr. Keegan has said about youth empowerment?
I support him 100%. I believe that we need to involve them much more than making decisions for them. And I stated here clearly, I mean, there before, that it's important to have interviews, focus group discussions with young people to hear from them what and how they think they can be able now to bring this rate of HIV down. Okay. Because outrightly, they have us taken at this. And we cannot sit in the office and make decisions for them. The other things, of course, that also bringing or increasing this problem. Number one is the issue of poverty. We've had youth who will not take their medication because they've not eaten. We have youth who you feel that whether I take this medication or not, I'm going to die at some point. And they feel that there'll be no need to continue. Now, if somebody was to organize functional support groups for the young people, these are matters that can be sorted out, that they can be able to talk about, that they can be able to validate, and the others who are like me, and they can get information from others on how they're able to cope this problem.
Okay.
And I think that can go a long way in helping young people now again to be part of the solution and not for us to make decisions for them.
Okay. Jackie, are we focusing on other areas on HIV other areas that affect the youth's life apart from HIV so as to empower them?
National AIDS Control Council is mandated to actually coordinate a multisectoral approach to addressing HIV, and that goes beyond health. And apart from that, we all know that HIV is a social problem. It's not only a health problem, and it has to be everybody's business. Some of the guidance and the policies, including the Kenya HIV Prevention Revolution Map from 2014, and most recently in 2015, we had a Kenya Fast Track Plan to end HIV and AIDS among adolescents and young people, basically provide a snapshot or suggests interventions that can be addressed nationally, at county level, and in different sectors. And some of the structural interventions, which are part of a combination prevention package that have been suggested, include keeping girls in schools. And you find that many organizations, whether they are grassroots level or they're bigger NGOs, are doing things as simple as providing sanitary towels to reduce adolescent girls and young women vulnerability and them missing school. We also have social protection interventions, whereby we have, for a number of years now, implemented cash transfers to vulnerable adolescent girls and young people, and also to orphans and vulnerable children. So these are some of the multisectoral approaches that go beyond just addressing testing. So there's a whole integration of interventions that also include EBIs, evidence-based interventions like microfinances for youth out of school in the community, for them to be able to address the issue of poverty that increases the vulnerability and risk of acquiring HIV.
Okay. Kuya, anything you may want to add? Just apart from keeping them in school and taking care of the young girls, what other youth empowerment programs are being rolled out?
I think the other thing is just about life skills, because these young people need to be taught how even to negotiate even for safer sex, because you know, like issues of HIV transmission is mostly through sexual intercourse. So we need young people to be given skills, these programs, empowerment programs, that they can be able to even defend themselves in terms of saying this is wrong, this is right, or an opportunity for them to be able to have that conversation with the whatever perpetrators that might be able to make young people get HIV infection. So with regard to the many empowerment programs, I think for me, from that perspective of knowledge and skills creation, just in addition to the cash transfers and other programs.
Okay, so would you say that the new curriculum is an avenue in which to give the youth these life skills, or to teach them from an early onset these life skills on HIV?
Yeah, I think the new curriculum is a milestone, and because it focuses on the aspect of age-appropriate information, because at different levels, these young people in schools are able to be taught the skills, are able to be given the knowledge with regard to issues of life, just separate from just exam work and other academic requirements. So for me, I think the curriculum is something that is very good, and is really going to help our nation, and especially young people, to be able to have healthy lives in future.
Njoroge, is the will the curriculum be one of the avenues? I know you've talked about life skills. Will it be one of the avenues in which to start teaching the young people about HIV and integrating them into their way of life?
I like the content and the curriculum. But my fear is about the people who are going to teach. Do they themselves have the skill? Do they themselves have the ability to be able to pass this information without being judgmental? Because remember, in this country, anything concerning sex is always viewed from a moralistic point of view.
Yeah.
And people mentioning anything about sexuality are viewed as people, again, who are going against the grain. And look at the issue of condoms. Look at the issue of PrEP. PrEP is a wonder drug that presents us with an opportunity to be able to...
No, but when you say it's a wonder drug, the doctors will come for your neck because they say it's not a wonder drug. It is...
This would be a crash
it's not a wonder drug.
It's going to be a crash of professions. But let's agree that it does provide a very good opportunity for young people and for every person who is sexually active to be able to protect themselves from HIV. But recently what people have been saying, release these drugs, give this drug to people, and people you go amok and you have sex left, right, and center. That is not necessarily true. I remember somebody talking, I don't know, this must have been one of my bosses, saying that simply because there's soap that can wash clothing, that you do not necessarily go mess up your cloth so that you can come and wash it clean with the detergent. My thinking is that a combination of all these interventions will help, but PrEP, you play a very big role. Remember, empowerment is about information. Empowerment is about provision of services. It's about condom. It's about keeping girls in school. It's about empowering them financially so that they don't have to rely on sponsors. And by and large, it has been seen to be a drug that is safe, that is efficacious. And I want to comment the comment because this drug is available in most health facilities in this country. And I think it's time we demystified PrEP and told people what PrEP is all about. PrEP has been worked on.
And it's important to also put in that, yes, it's available in health facilities, but there are certain requirements. You just don't go and get PrEP, right, Jackie?
Yes, you have to have some high-level risk of acquiring HIV. And when it was introduced in the country, the population that were being targeted are basically key populations, and that include MSMs, those ones who are injecting drugs, and also discordant couples. And then there was a subcategory of adolescents and young people, which is also kind of like work in progress. But the bottom line is you have to have high risk of acquiring
and substantial ongoing risk of acquiring HIV.
I have two questions for the clinicians, with all due respect. Would you deny somebody a life-saving drug simply because they do not fall within this category and that category? And again, how do we come to categorize? I mean, what kind of criteria do we use to categorize people?
You know, the moment you say life-saving, then it means this particular person is in one of the categories who are at ongoing risk of acquiring. So automatically they will qualify for that PrEP. Dr. Kuya?
Yeah, I think I like what my colleague is really talking about, and I know he's interacted with a lot of research in this area. But I think PrEP is very good. I think we have discussed it before, even on this panel. But the issue is most at-risk population. So that is the bottom line.
I agree PrEP is not for everybody.
Yes.
I agree PrEP is not for everybody.
Because yeah,
outright people you use different methods to protect themselves, including abstinence.
yeah.
Because let's not assume that everybody out there you have sex and indiscriminately and put themselves at risk. And it's important for us to use all these methods, but to condemn, to categorize, and to partition certain segments of the community. I don't think that will help.
I think the issue is not about condemning, partitioning, or really categorizing the community. PrEP is just one of the methods that are used in HIV prevention. There are others that, like basic ones, like you've talked about the condom, you've talked about even information, just giving information to even the people who are not at risk or to the general population. So it's not that if the people who are using PrEP have been categorized as certain special people vis-a-vis the general population. So that is not the message here, Mr. Joroge.
Okay, just chip in briefly on
I was
that
actually
issue
taking
of
us back to our original discussion.
Yes, because, okay, yeah.
Because I know we sort of diverted to issues of PrEP.
Yeah.
Just about the HIV curriculum, I wanted to mention that Ministry of Health and Ministry of Education actually currently, they've started having engagements and conversations regarding inclusion of HIV in the curriculum. And currently, National AIDS Control Council is actually supporting with capacity building of teachers who are supposed to deliver the family life education, because this was a concern that was raised about the delivery of the content of the HIV curriculum within the new curriculum.
And I think the concern was, was valid, because we have done stories of young people. We've talked to young people who are actually stigmatized from the classrooms by their teachers. So how do we address this? Because these young people, 15 to 24 years, will spend a better part of their life in school at the hands of teachers and at the hands of other students. So how do we address this? Because from them, the issue of being stigmatized from the classroom by their teachers is actually quite a concern.
The last stigma index study that was conducted in the country indicated that the stigma level was at 45%. And honestly speaking, with the epidemic existing in the country for around 30 years, it's something that we should have addressed by now. With that said, stigma is not only a problem in schools, it is also a problem in our communities. So as much as teachers are also part of our communities, and they're doing exactly what even you and I subject adolescents and young people or people living with HIV in the communities with the same stigma that happens even in schools. We have been making a lot of effort to use various platforms to discuss or address the issue of stigma and discrimination. And more so, we've been utilizing a lot of mass media. We've been utilizing various avenues just to discuss how stigma is actually a barrier to prevention and care of people living with HIV. And that is the reason why HIV testing, even among adolescents and young people, still remains low because of the fear that comes with, oh, if I know my status, if people know my status, I will not be able to, I'm going to be discriminated upon. And we are encouraging different sectors, including the judiciary, to address the issue of human rights, because that is a human right violation if somebody is stigmatized or discriminated, whether they're in school, whether they're 5 years or 6 years or even 10 years old. So behavior change, including addressing stigma and discrimination, will take us quite a while. But it is something we have to sustain.
Yeah.
Dr. Kuya?
Yeah, I think to add on what my colleague is saying, you know, in 2003, Kenya committed itself to what is called the ministerial commitment, the ESA commitment, East and Central Africa commitment on issues of comprehensive sexuality education. And then in 2010, 2014, the Kenya government, actually through the means of education, came up with the education sector policy on HIV/AIDS. And this was supposed to be really implemented in schools. And we had two versions. We had the teacher version and the pupil version. But at the moment, if you really count the years up to date, very little has been done when it comes to really implementation of that policy. And that policy is very clear on issues of stigma, addressing stigma in schools, where pupils, especially in primary school, most of them, or I can say they are not aware that HIV/AIDS is okay. They are saying that the pupils or their colleagues who have HIV/AIDS are very promiscuous, or really maybe they are. It's an issue of promiscuity. Yet,
which is really an issue
yeah,
of information, perception, stigmatization, and discrimination again.
Exactly, and that one also affects really brings the issue of stigma high, because some of these young people acquired through perinatal acquired mother-to-child transmission. So they need to be told that your colleagues really, it's because of their status, maybe their parents, some discussions around that, so that they can be able to reduce that stigma. The other thing is about the drugs, these ARVs that are given to these young people. I think the environment in which these young people really take the drugs, especially in school, is not really conducive. And recently from, I think, one of the networks of people living with HIV, it's NEFAC, recently did a study. And it was almost related to stigma, about the packaging of the ARVs. You know, they're always
in the container,
they're in the containers, and sometimes they make noise. And then, so these young people are forced to either pick them and put in papers so that they cannot really make noise. And even packaging of these drugs is also contributing to that stigma. But by and large, I think teachers just need to be well informed, need to be well educated. They need to be taken through these issues of HIV, issues of treatment, issues of management, so that they can be able to understand that it's not the fault of these children, or it's not the fault of the young people.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'd like to just get your closing comments on it. Where, in just very briefly, where do you think, or what do you think would be the most effective way of getting the youth so as to reduce the current numbers as we see? And I'll start with you, Dr. Kwea.
I think for me, they always say there's nothing for us without us. Young people, especially those who are living with HIV/AIDS, needs to be involved in programming, in developing of these programs that are really targeting this HIV prevention and management. I think that is one of the things that is really lacking. The other thing is creation of support groups. And she has talked about it. I think these people who are living and who are living with HIV and using the drugs understand the effects, understand the challenges they are facing when they are taking the medication. So it is important for those who are starting to use the drugs. They need to get the experience, they need to be informed so that they can be able to manage. So for me, those two things can really help in
Jackie, just
their
briefly,
health. Yeah.
what would be the best way of targeting the youth?
There's so many approaches.
One.
But for me, I think I'll just mention two things. We need to demystify what it means to meaningfully engage adolescents and young people in the fight against HIV. And once we get that right, that's going to automatically translate to peer approaches that are effective, that can be basically used at community level, because all these things start at the community level.
All right.
Yes.
Njoroge, just briefly, what would be the best way of targeting the youth so as to see a reduction of the numbers as we have them now?
We have success stories about adolescents who have been very good in adherence. And this could work, or they could be used as peer counselors for the successful implementation of provision of ARVs. Number two, to close, is to commend the people who work in CCCs. They work sometimes under very extreme conditions, but I believe they do a nice job.
Okay.
Looking at the figures of adherence in this country, I think it compares quite well, even better than some of the most developed countries in the world. And I think my colleagues will agree with me here.
Thank you.
So I think let's see what we can do about burnout within among staff in CCCs, and I believe that can also improve the lives of the young people.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
So youth empowerment and having programs for the youth, by the youth, is what we can say we have picked from this discussion, so as to reduce the stigma levels among the youth, and so as to reduce the numbers that we're seeing among the youth who contribute 51% to the new HIV infections in the country. Thank you very much for tuning in. We are discussing youth and HIV, and with me in studio was Njoroge Moathi, who's a consultant clinical psychologist. We had Jackie Dache, who's the Adolescent and Young People Program Officer at the National AIDS Control Council, and Dr. Johnston Kuya, who is the National Coordinator of the Sexual, Reproductive Health and Rights Alliance in Kenya. And that's where we wrap it up this evening on this discussion on Health Digest. Until next weekend, where we shall have another discussion on matters that affect your health, I want to wish you a very good night and a blessed Sunday ahead. I'm Dr. Mercy Korir. Thank you very much.